Welcome back to Country Cow Designs. I'm Jo and we make sewing patterns for bag makers. But in this video I'm going to show you how to use rivets in your bag making. Rivets are fantastic for bag making. As you can see on this bag, I've used them for the handles on the front and also to reinforce the D-ring tabs on the side. Rivets can get into places that you can't get with the sewing machine. You can fit them after the whole bag is assembled, which is really helpful. And they add some strength and stability if you do it right. As you can see on this bag, we've got them for the handles as well, but this is a different style of rivets. So we are going to show you 3 ways to do it between me and Adam. Now the first way is a way that I used when I first started off, and it's the cheapest way to start. It's with a hand tool set. This is really affordable off Amazon, but I will warn you, it's difficult. It can often end up with your rivets being not quite perfectly set, so they're not strong enough or they're dented. So just bear that in mind. I found I had to do a practice run on a few rivets before I did the ones that I really wanted to get right. I ended up wasting quite a few rivets, so let's be honest, if you're going to be making a lot of bags, it's better to choose one of the other options. But how this works is you get a little plate that has the rivets sizes in it, so your rivet will fit into one of these gaps perfectly. And then when you're fitting it to the bag, after you've punched your hole, you put your rivet through the bag. This bit goes underneath the rivet, this tool goes on top, and you smack it down, and that's it. But it is going to rely on you smacking it down straight and with enough force. I'm not going to lie, it's not easy, especially if your bag is kind of moving around a little bit, which can happen sometimes. My preferred method is to use a hand press. So next I will show you how I set the rivets using one of these. Okay, so I'm ready to fit a rivet just here, and what I'm going to do first of all is use my rivet placement tool. So I can place that over my strap and make sure that my rivet is going to be centered. This is especially good if you're doing multiple rivets, because then you can make sure they're all centered. Then I need to punch the hole. So I've got my little leather hole punch pliers. These are available from Amazon and most DIY hardware stores. So I'm just going to punch that hole. Now this is set on the smallest setting, 2mm, which normally is the best setting when you're doing this. Then I'm going to grab a bit of scrap stabilizer. I like to put a bit of stabilizer behind my rivets just for extra enforcement, and I find this particularly important if I'm using cotton like I am here. So although the fabric's interfaced, this is like a heavy stabilizer. For this you could use foam, fleece, Decaville heavy, anything like that. So I'm going to pop my rivet through all the layers, making sure that my stabilizer isn't in the seam. And then I just pop the cap on. And now I just need to set it. So for setting it, I'm going to use this hand press. So this hand press, you can see I've just got a piece of old wax canvas covering it. That's because it has metal dies, and I like to be cautious that this doesn't damage my rivets, which sometimes it can do. So when we talk about dies with hand press, you have 2 dies, the bottom and then the top one unscrews. So this is the die set. And for this case, they both fit these rivet caps. So this is actually a 10mm die set for a 9mm face. Personally, I prefer to use a slightly bigger one. I just find it has more room for error. So you can see it's just a tiny bit big for that, but it works absolutely perfectly. So whatever you're using your hand press for, you fit your dies in. And you can buy these die sets to fit your press, but watch out, different presses have different die sets, so just make sure that you check the sizing of yours before you buy them. So it's as simple as putting your rivet in. So I do like to have my little scrap piece of fabric there. Make sure that your rivet is centered, that you can feel that it's completely centered on that bottom rivet die, and then you're going to bring the top one down to meet it. Okay, now before you actually press it, just check that it's sitting comfortably, because if it's sort of half on the die, you're going to end up creasing your rivet. Okay, now you just give it a good press. And when it's done, you will not be able to remove that rivet even if you want to. So on your hand press, normally you'll have different ones. Ours has a really lightweight base because it is a cheapie, which is why Adam's fitted it to this wooden block. If you get a heavier one, it's easier because lightweight base means when you're pressing down, it's kind of going to flip up and it's just very frustrating. So just bear that in mind. Buying a decent one probably is a better idea. This is adjustable, so if you find that it's crushing your rivets too hard, you will know because your rivet posts will sort of come through. You'll be able to see them. Then you know that it's pressing too hard, and what you need to do is adjust this. So what you can do is just adjust this top screw and you loosen it so that when the handle comes down, it won't come down as far. So you can imagine if the screw was higher up, it wouldn't come down quite so far. It wouldn't crush the rivet quite so much. So that is how you can easily adjust it. Bear in mind as well, if you're getting crushed rivets, that it could be to do with your rivet post length. So you get different post lengths. For example, we stock these medium ones, and then we also have long ones which are 2mm longer, and the 2mm can actually make quite a big difference. So just make sure that you're using the appropriate length rivet for the amount of fabric and layers that you're going through. If your rivets are too long, you can always go ahead and add even more stabilizer behind just to thicken it up. So that's how I use a hand press to set rivets, which is my absolute favourite method for bag making. Adam's favourite method for bag making is these traditional types of rivets. So these are particularly popular with leather craft makers. As you can see, you've got like a little knobbly bit sticking out, and these are real copper. So Adam is going to demonstrate how you use those.
So what do you need to use traditional copper rivets? Well, obviously you're going to need the rivets themselves. Now these come in two parts. You have the post, which come in various lengths and various widths for the cap. These are kind of shorter ones, which is perfect for bag making because you don't need them too long. And then you have the rove. Now, these come as a set. You have to make sure they actually fit the post you work on because the diameter of the post can change, therefore the size of the rove will also change. So you need those. What else are you going to need? Well, tools wise, you're going to need a really solid hard surface to hit against. Now this is like a mini anvil, which is perfect. There's various other ways, but essentially you need something solid, heavy and metal that you can punch against for the rivet. You're then going to need a good solid hammer, not a rubber mallet hammer. You need a metal hammer, a nice heavy one. Some snippers, which should be used for trimming down the post afterwards. We then need some dies or rivet setters. This is a two-piece one for different stages of setting the rivet. You can get sort of a one that combines both tools in one. These are pretty good, obviously cheaper because it's only one and they're quite available. Personally, I think you get a better job if you use ones that are designed for each part of the process. So these are good if you're starting out, but I would recommend a proper set if you plan to do more of it. So that's actually show you how to set a traditional copper rivet in a bag that I'm making, which is the industrial tote, which will be released as a tutorial next week. But I thought I'd just show you how to set the rivets in this bag to demonstrate the process. So here we have our leather panel. I've already made the holes, punched those holes out. Because I'm working with traditional copper rivets, generally the shaft's bigger or the post is bigger. So I've got a 3mm hole for these. So perhaps a bit bigger than if you're used to, say, compare working with double cap rivets, which is often a 2mm hole. So first thing we need to do is take our nice heavy anvil and place our panel over this. And we want to feed through the back hole here, the post. Here we go. Now, technically you can do this the other way round, but it is quite nice having sort of the rove exposed on the outside of the bag, just to show off that it is a traditional copper rivet. So we tend to do it like this, but you can do it the other way if you want the cap showing on the outside. So we put that in place. Now we get our rove, plonk it on top, and it's an interference fit, which means it won't just slip down the post of the rivet, and that's a good thing. Now we're going to take our punch that has a hole in it, and we're going to place it on top, and we're going to send the rivet down to the bottom. Now that's gone down fairly easily. You have to give it a good old firm whack, but it's a benefit of having a nice heavy metal base like an anvil, which you can punch into. Makes it a lot easier. So that's now assembled, and already now it's a nice tight fit. Next we need to trim down the rivet post. Now we don't want to cut it flush, we need to leave a little bit, so a couple of millimeters, something like that, just over a millimeter, and use your snippers to chop it down. The longer your handles are, the easier you will find this. If you've got tiny little metal pliers, it will be really tough. So long handle snippers make chopping these down quite hard, but it's only copper, it's not too bad. So now we've kind of got this sharp point. So next I'm going to take my other tool, which is kind of got like a dimple in it, and again you want different sizes, depends on the size of the post you're working with. This one works fine. I'm going to place that on the top and give it some hits. And what that's doing already, it's just rounding over the tip. I'll just zoom in for you on this overhead camera. If you can see that, it's just begun sort of doming the shaft that we cut down earlier. So don't go too hard with it, but you want to just dome over. That actually now really helps this sort of spread out the post and really firmly grip the rove that we put on earlier. Now what I like to do as well is I just get the hammer that we're working with, it's got a nice flat surface, and I just sort of just tap the top. And as you do that, you'll notice that the cut off post is kind of getting flattened, and you end up with a nice perfect round finish. So again, you don't want to completely crush it, but just tapping it, you'll see that it will softly crush onto the rove, and it will create a really nice tight fit. So there we go. That's how we use a traditional copper rivet.
So that's 3 options for fitting rivets, including our 2 favourite options. They give totally different results, don't they?
Yeah, that's by far my favourite. The big downside is it's a bit more manual, and they are quite a bit more pricey than your standard double cap rivets, but worth it in my opinion.
I prefer double cap rivets. Let us know in the comments what you prefer, and thanks for joining us. We will see you again soon. Bye.
See ya.